today I'm alongside Sydney Hines. She played at Central Connecticut State University, graduated in 2019. So shout out to the NEC conference. We used to play against each other for a few years. I graduated a year before her, but now she's on to bigger and better things. Assistant coaching at Goucher College for the men's basketball team. And yes, I said it, men's. She's on the men's side of things and she's doing very well. So thank you for checking in, Sydney.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So first of all, let's talk about Goucher. What made you want to coach men's basketball as opposed to women?
So I get asked that question a lot, actually. So growing up, I played basketball since I was 7. So I'm always used to being with girls and then coaching, Division I women's basketball. I'm always with women. So I figured that it would just be kind of a different type of feel to coach men, especially now that they're being more accepted in that industry. And like I always said, when I was growing up, I was always getting coached by male and females, but you never saw female coaching men. There was always a man, So I just figured that, to try to just make a difference and, it's all basketball. You know what I'm saying? There's differences between men's and basketball, but men's and women's basketball, but it's pretty much the same game. And, I just figured that I would get on to a different side.
Well, I like that perspective on it. At the end of the day, it's all just basketball, and people are always surprised, because there's not many female coaches out there who are coaching on the men's sides of things, not just in, your state, which is Maryland, but in the country, period. So to see you doing it and at such a young age is amazing. So kind of on the other side, to speak about the things that you've been able to accomplish and do, you are the second female in Goucher's men's basketball history to coach on the men's team. And the first was April Rose, who is the head coach's wife. So that's a completely different dynamic. And then the first African-American woman, which hats off to you, to coach men's basketball at Goucher College. And then only the third female coach to coach men's basketball in the state of Maryland, period.
Yep.
So I mean, that's a huge, huge accomplishment, especially for African-American women. So how is it knowing that, first of all, as a woman, you always have to hold yourself to this higher standard? You know that if you make a mistake, it's looked upon a little bit more as opposed to if you were a male in that position, and then especially as a Black woman.
Right. So I have really supportive staff members. So they kind of, it's not just a position where they're oh yeah, you're going to be a coach. It's more okay, we're going to help you and guide you so that you learn, what to do, what not to do. They're always being very helpful. Although the head coach is Caucasian, I do have 2 of the other assistant coaches who are African American, so they kind of, it's having both worlds. Our team is very diverse, so they just kind of help out a lot. I definitely get held to a higher standard, being that I'm so young, being that I'm a woman, and being that I'm African American. But I just take it with a grain of salt. I know what to do, I know what not to do, and then I just just do my job.
That's awesome. So you feel as though they kind of welcomed you and are letting you embrace that role, and it's a level of respect that they hold you to. Although, you're held to a higher standard, you still get that same respect as a male counterpart would, which is great. So on the other side of things, what have you learned as a coach that you would say you didn't quite understand as a player?
So I didn't think that it's not that I didn't quite understand or comprehend it. It's just more it's so much more important now that I'm a coach than when I was a player. So for instance, help side defense, you want to be the one oh yeah, I'm gonna stop you. You're not going past me, but sometimes you do get beat, it happens. So being that person to protect the basket is definitely something that I know I preach to my guys, you have to get in the midline, you have to help your teammates because, like I said, those things happen. Another thing that I thought of was knowing your role. So like when I was a player, going from high school to college, like when you get there, it's like, oh yeah, I'm a scorer, or I did this in high school. Like you're expected to do that in college. But when you get to college, it's not like that. And I didn't understand. I'm like, why can't I score if you recruited me for scoring? And we played against each other. Like I was more of a defensive specialist than, an offensive specialist. So now that I got to coaching, it's like each component is so important to the game and like so important to a win. So like look at, Michael Jordan has his documentary out right now, and look at Dennis Rodman. Like he was a defensive specialist. He was shot blocks, rebounding, diving on the floor. And like that was such an important component to winning basketball games. And yeah, everyone wants to be like Mike, shooting the ball, scoring and everything. But he was so important that like if he wasn't there, you noticed. So I think those two things are, big that I noticed now that I'm a coach.
And that's another great point that we can make about the game of basketball. Like, it takes everybody on the floor to know their role. Everybody's not going to be that scorer. Everybody's not going to be able to play on both ends of the floor, score and play defense. And so kind of being in that different side of things and having to preach to somebody else to understand their role is probably like a different feel, but I know you understand it a little bit more now. So kind of elaborate a little bit more on like, what is your role as an assistant coach? Are you like the recruiting coordinator, or just kind of give us your job description?
So I'm pretty much a little bit of everything. So I'm an assistant coach, but I'm a grad assistant. So, but at Goucher, they just call you an assistant. They know you're a grad, but you're an assistant coach. So I'm going to school part-time, doing my master's degree there. And for my position, I'm more so like, I work with recruiting now. It's basically, they're trying to teach you everything that you need to know so that in any type of job that you go into next, that you're like prepared for it. So I do film and scout. I help with recruiting. I take care of like food, like meals, trips. I like planned for like going to hotels, the flights.
You're the woman doing it all. You're like the person, you're doing 3 positions that it would be at like a Division I school where we have the director of basketball operations and all that stuff handling those things. Yep. So you're doing it all.
Yeah. So like I just don't have one thing. He'll just be like, oh, I want to show you this. And I'll be like, okay, because like I don't know what I'm going to get into next. So it's like, okay, I'd rather learn now and prepare than to like go in blindsided, like, oh, I've never worked with this, or I've never, had to order meals or anything like that. So I just kind of do it everything that they see.
That's good. So the jack of all trades at the end of the day. And what are you getting your master's degree in?
So it's kind of long. It's a master's in education, and the specialization is athletic program leadership and administration. So basically, I kind of tell people, because they're like, what does that mean? Like, it's like, helping you to be a coach or an AD or, just anything in the field. So it's just basically that.
I'm surprised you remembered all that. You're like, it's long, but it's this. Got it down in science. People ask me all the time.
Yeah, they do.
So that's pretty awesome. So where do you see yourself? You said like since you're doing so many different trades, you don't really know if you want to be like a head coach on the men's side one day, or like where do you see yourself going from here?
So I only have one more year at Goucher, so I'll graduate in May, and then my position here will be finished. So I'm planning on going into another coaching position with men's basketball. I ultimately want to get to Division I, if not straight out, then work my way up. And I do want to get to the NBA. I thought about doing head coaching. I think like once I get my feet wet a little bit more in assistant coaching, and I realize like, it's all about, can you handle it? Or, are you able to lead an entire team and your staff? Like, so once I get into it a little bit, I feel like I could go into head coaching. For now, the immediate future, I just want to get into, assistant coaches, get into Division I, and then possibly the NBA.
So when you're traveling to these games or teams come and visit you guys, are you typically the only woman on the sidelines?
Absolutely. Every time, every time I'm always the only women coach, especially like the assistants. There's no head coaches that are currently, anyone that I've played. But yeah, pretty much. A lot of people think that I am a manager or that I'm an athletic trainer. And then like I'll be in sweats when we travel at least. And then or even when I go to the gym, like I'm not gonna be completely dressed. And then I'll go get dressed and then I'll come back and they'll be like they'll look at me like, is she in college? Yeah, and like I wear like heels and stuff, so they're like, I'm a little confused. But yeah, I do get a lot of looks, a little confusion. A lot of people ask like, how old are you? Because like honestly, I look a little younger. I look like 18 to 20 maybe, but like I'm 23, so like a lot of people are very surprised when I come in the gym. But definitely the only one, especially like last year, the only woman assistant coach or coach in general.
Would you feel as though like, have you ever felt like you intimidated somebody because of like who you are, being like a woman on the sideline coaching for a men's team? Like, what is your demeanor during the game? Were you hopping up and yelling at people and stuff like that? Or are you more a little bit chill, like, I'm just sit here, write down stats and stuff like that?
So it's a mixture of both. So like on the sidelines, I'm pretty much taking care of like the foul situation, timeout situation. Um, so for me, like I'll be like either talking to my players one-on-one when they come out, or talking to the assistant coaches like, oh, we may need to make an adjustment here, or this needs to be stopped. But then like sometimes I will yell out like wall up or like something. Like I'm like very animated when I get in there. But
It's because you still have like that same passion from when you were playing.
exactly, because I did the same thing with my teammates. I'm like, stop her, like bring down. I'm like yelling out certain stuff to my team, so like I still do it to them. Which a lot of them, the guys and the staff, were surprised at how quickly I just jumped into like speaking and talking. Because like usually I guess people think that you're gonna be like kind of shy and reserved at first until you like get into it. But like as soon as we were on the court, I'm like, yep. So here we go. Like you need to do this, this, that, and the third. So I'm a
So
little mixture of
so
both.
they were like receptive of you, like they respected you in your position and your, criticism. Because sometimes guys can be like, not listening to her, like, what
Exactly. No, they were very receptive. Like I said, my staff is very supportive of what I'm doing right now. So especially the head coach, he told me like before I met them, like if they ever disrespect you, like come to me, like I will handle it. We will have a meeting, everybody will be there. Like he's really like rooting for me and like trying to like make sure that I am not treated any different than any other coach. And when I did get to meet them, like they all came up to me like as soon as they saw me, introduce themselves. Wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to shake her hand or like, oh, like laughing and joking. Like they were just like, hello, I am such and such. So, from day one, they've just been receptive. They've been very respectful, my players and my staff. So I'm very like lucky and thankful for that.
That's awesome. So kind of taking it back to you being selected as the coach, the first women's assistant coach. She coached from 1995 to 2000. So first of all, you're the second coach that they have, but it's been over 2 decades basically since Goucher's men's basketball team had a woman on the staff. So talk about the process that you had to go through in order to solidify this position.
So a lot of people think that it's like a lot of ins and outs to doing it, but when I tell you, I really just applied. I saw the job. Like, I tell people all the time because they're like, "Where did you see it?" I'm like, "On Indeed." Like, I don't know. Like, So I just went on Indeed. I was looking for some grad assistantships. Crazy thing is, all the women rejected me. Like for a women's team, they all rejected me and were like, some of them said I wasn't qualified. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm not qualified if, I played and I'm straight out, but, there's different qualifications for certain people, but he gave me a chance. So basically I just applied. I went to the interview.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just, went into the interview, said whatever I need to say. I guess he saw the passion in me, like when I was speaking about basketball, and he knew that I was serious, not just like, oh yeah, I want to get into men's basketball. Like, like, I was actually really serious about the career that I want to choose. So, I just, he got he called me back, and maybe like a week later, and he offered the position. So I took it. So it's pretty like straightforward.
Wow. Wow. I thought it was like a whole little, process ins and out that there we go.
Yeah, it's indeed like a lot of people were like, oh, so do you have a connect? Like, oh, like you must have known him before. And it's like, no, like I had my resume set. I had, all my credentials thus far. And I just went in there and I presented everything to him and I answered every question that he had. And, I guess he was just impressed with it and he chose.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, in the world that we live in today, it is a lot about who you know. So that is impressive that you went in there prepared, never meeting this guy before, and being able to, really speak and present yourself and ultimately get that position. So that's really great for you that you were able to really represent like that. And then Goucher is located in what part of Maryland now?
It's in Baltimore, so it's
Oh, it's
like
close to home.
right. So it's like in like the Towson area.
Okay.
So like right down the street from Towson University. But yeah, that's where it's located.
Okay. So kind of to wrap it up, can you name like one of your most memorable games as a coach so far in your young career?
I can't put one on. Like I don't know. I can't think of just one game. I think one game. Well, it wasn't a full game. Like we're still in the rebuilding stage, and they're still learning. We definitely had a really young team. So now that we have a little bit more experience, I project that we will be so much better, especially like this season and upcoming seasons, even when I leave. But I think one game that kind of stood out to me was a game against Susquehanna. We played against them. We ended up losing. The second half wasn't as great as we would like, but the first half, like they actually believed in our system, believed in what we were doing, and they came out fighting. And like, I was just taken aback by it because I was just like, this is what I was waiting to see from my players. Like they were all playing their role. They were all help side defense. They were trying to find the open man. Like they were sharing the ball. Like everything that we were preaching to them thus far, they actually were out there getting it done. Like I said, the second half definitely got away from us, but I don't take that as a complete loss because that way they can, watch film, they can learn from their mistakes, and then they can get better for the next season. So I think that was like a pivotal point in our season where we saw like, okay, their system actually works. Like, let's do what they're asking and, we'll have good results.
Through the lens of like a former player, have you ever thought about things that way? Like you take an L in a game and like you're blown, but you're like, I mean, hey, we did XYZ correctly and we're going to bounce back.
Right. As a player, I don't know, like I was just like more mad about us losing. But then like as I watched film back, then I'm like, okay, but we did this like really well. Like, okay, we ran that set to the T. Like we got the action that we wanted. So it's like you can't really be like you can be mad to a certain extent. Like, the immediate like once you lose, you're like, you're not gonna be happy. But, like that's only going to help you prepare for the next competition or the next season. So it's like, you learn from your mistakes, you get back in the lab, in the gym, you get it done, you fix those things and you work on it for the next time you play. So now that I'm a coach, it's like, okay, well, yeah, we lost. Yeah, people are looking at our record like, oh my gosh, like this is not okay. But it's like, at the end of the day, we're learning, we're getting better, we're having more experience, and we're having the team that we actually want to have, for Goucher. So I think that we're in stepping in the right direction.
That's amazing. I really love to hear about your process, the growth in the process. You didn't go into a situation that was necessarily pretty, but I think in the end, it's going to help you get to where you want to go in your coaching career, knowing that I've been a player, I've been a coach, fought through adversity and all those other amazing things that will tie into your future. And, we'll see you at the NBA level because that's where you want to go and that's where you will go. So I definitely appreciate the time and getting to learn more about Goucher College and your GA position, and then just taking the time out of your day to speak and come on checking in.
Oh, of course. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I really like what you're doing. I know, this is interviewing me, but like just looking at like, what you're doing with the sports journalism. You know, I saw like on your page and, you know, just talking to you that like you've been really getting your name out there and really, you know, working hard in your position as well. So, you know, good luck to you in your future as well.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Well, guys, we'll wrap that up. This has been Checking In alongside Sydney, and we'll see you all next episode.